Well, first you have to bridge the security and project manager gap, so that it is. I mean, I can win as many converts in developer land as possible, and that's not often too hard from the background that I have. So I need the project manager to agree that this has a place in the schedule, that this has a place in the budget, and that really makes the difference.
Welcome to the DevSec for Scale podcast, the show that makes security a first-class citizen for growing companies. Welcome back, everyone, to the DevSec for Scale podcast. I'm Jeremy Hess, head of developer relations at Achilles, and with me today is Duane Gran. He's Director of Information Security at Converge Technology Solutions. And Duane, we actually met on LinkedIn, which was fantastic because it's always nice to just kind of have a conversation with somebody online, and then that turns into, hey, why don't we sit down for a longer chat about some of these topics that we're talking about. So thanks so much for coming on the show. Today we're talking about sort of that where developers and security sit, where security meets developers, or where developers meet security. And obviously there's a lot to talk about, whether it's theoretical or practical. So we're going to get into a few of these different things. But before we get into a little bit more about you and what you're up to today, let's get straight into it. So we all know the classic sort of DevOps paradigm these days, right? And the DevSec Ops shift now as well on top of that. So do you currently see a lot of friction between dev and sec?
I don't think it's so much friction, but what I'm seeing is gradually where I think we're going to see that they're not so different, or at least that's my ambitious hope, is that we have a new title at the DevSec Ops as a way to get our headspace around it. But similar in the way that I think a lot of work in system administration has absorbed security practice, I think it's my sincere hope that in security that happens well. If there's friction right now, it's just because somebody's the friction might be that assuming the DevSecOps person is kind of responsible for that security until we've kind of learned collectively how we're all responsible. Anytime you have something that we all need to own, that kind of is, that's the other person's area, that's the potential friction. And so part of what I'll be interested to talk today about how we all maybe eagerly have some ownership in it.
Great, absolutely. So on that note, let's get into a little bit about yourself. Duane, can you just introduce yourself to the audience and tell us what you've been doing and what you're up to now?
Sure. So I'm the Director of Information Security for Converge Technology Solutions, which is a company that does a tremendous amount of customer-facing type of solutions, including to some part software development. But in my career, I actually started in software development myself. Is what I was all about, what I loved doing, and I still enjoy it. I dabble, but I kind of shifted towards the security side. So I kind of have a foot in both of these worlds.
Great. Now, can you talk a little bit? And we talked about this a little bit off camera, but sort of the difference between what you do in terms of InfoSec at your organization as opposed to, what other type of, cyber positions might be. So like internal versus external, I think we talked about, right?
So it's interesting. Converge owns a cybersecurity company. So I have about 200 coworkers who are deeply familiar with information security, penetration testing, the whole range of these things. But they're doing work for our customers, and my work is internal. That the staff that I work with, they are my customer. I'm trying to protect them and our common interest in the safety and security of the business.
Got it. Great. So getting back into our topic at hand, you mentioned that you started off as a developer. and then you made your way into security. I find that to be a little bit different than the norm. Maybe I'm wrong. I know a lot of security people have sort of some coding that they've done, but I don't know if they've been, full-blown developers that have made their way to security. Can you give us a little bit about what that journey was like and some of the things that you learned as you made that your way into security?
Sure. And, in fairness, I might have oversimplified it, that broad arc like that, because really from rather an early age, and I might date myself a little bit on this, but as a teenager running a bulletin board system that was hacking focused, I like to say that I never did anything which that caught the attention of the law, but might have made my mother a little disappointed with sort of these pursuing interest in hacking. And that's how everybody kind of starts. They think security, well, then I'm going to wear the hoodie and break into things and disrupt stuff. And then later you learn this, it's a little broader than that. So that interest started a bit before software development. And then I studied computer science at Ball State University, and kind of, there was a couple of different flavors of the way to do it, but I really enjoyed software development, just building something new, and the amount of control that you can exert over how something would be built. So I worked as kind of a lead or senior programmer on with a few companies. Actually, the fun thing is sort of accidentally started a software company in college. And I say accidentally because if you're sort of making money, at some point you have to kind of incorporate and you've got to have more people, and it kind of becomes a business, which was really fun. It was a fantastic experience. And security kind of weaved through this. I'll give an example. That company that I founded, we had a web hosting portion of our business, and somebody had to kind of step forward to kind of manage some of the infrastructure stuff. And so I was kind of keenly aware that if our systems got compromised, how bad this would be, lost revenue and embarrassment and so on. So I developed this philosophy with my co-founders where I said, I want to be able to walk around the room with the root password pasted on my forehead, but that we've had so many other safeguards and alerting mechanisms in place that it shouldn't matter. And so that was a standard that we went with just for kind of fun. But software development was always to me like a means to an end, that there was something cool we wanted to do, and that if it meant learning a new programming language or integrating some kind of third-party library or whatever it may be to get from here to there. That's what it was always about to me. So when, in light of that, the shift towards security is getting from here to there is increasingly is a lot more messy. And I spent a lot of my career doing enough security to keep us out of trouble, but it's getting harder. The reality these days is it's criminal syndicates that are basically actively looking for some way to take your stuff, lock you out of it, and extort you either by you being locked out or threatening to release embarrassing information about your company, proprietary information and stuff like that. So the stakes are a lot higher. So I think you have to be really, really intentional about security. So I think some specialization has emerged out of that. And so I just became intensely interested in how we can improve the situation, how we can do better by ourselves and the people who trust us to build custom software.
Absolutely, yeah, and of course that sort of puts you in a position where you feel, okay, well, we really have to sort of work on how to make sure that security is almost owned by the developers as well, right? I mean, as much as you have a security team and you have, your CISO and you have your security engineering team, you also need to make sure that your developers are sort of learning and building using, the different sort of philosophies that are being taught through the security side. So in terms of that aspect, so what is sort of your philosophy, your general philosophy on the way security should work, especially within the developer side of an organization?
I think that I think the key is that is to broaden your imagination. That's what I kind of try to do with developers, is to say that your work is creative. As a developer, I was continually there's like this kind of joke about the project manager brings you the specification or the user stories, whatever whatever your framework is, and that as a good developer, you're trying to read between the lines and at times even advocate for where you're feeling user land empathy. If you're doing this well, there's plenty of them who don't. So if you're those developers, become one. Okay, that's my suggestion. But so that's something good developers are continually trying to get empathy for how maybe the user experience. Well, you have to have imagination. I've been given plenty of bad specifications, and I think any programmer will talk to that example, or that you start down building something and you realize this is going to not be satisfying. Okay, so I've set the frame of reference for probably something most developers are going, yeah, that was a crappy design that I was asked to build. Or if I just do, or if I give you what you asked for, you are going to be unhappy. And so how can I advocate for you to help you see? So it's imagination. Take that over to security a little bit and start to imagine how people misuse what you build. If you, as a developer, if you've ever watched end users use the user interface that you built, it is incredibly eye-opening. They click things in the wrong way. They type stuff in fields that don't make sense because you expected numeric entries, and they started typing the word 5 instead of number 5 into the field. Like all this crazy kind of stuff that userland does to your stuff, to your tools you've built. Okay, ramp that up tenfold and start imagining that somebody wants to start really screwing with you. They're going to start putting in SQL commands through your forms. They're going to see if they threw 5 megabytes of data into a form field, or if they could somehow script something to clog up your network and deny service. It's just another form of imagination. And it's actually kind of fun when you start to get into it and you talk with other people and you say, can you imagine some ways that people can misbehave with this thing? It is going to create some more work for you to mitigate against it. But I'd put it to you this way. Would you rather put the effort into trying to harden your system against a denial of service while you're in sort of while you're in developer mode and all of that? Or would you like to do it when, the executive 3 layers up is losing their mind because the system is non-performant, customers are mad, and we're trying to fix this because we're in a denial of service kind of experience? So it's like, it's worthwhile, but it's imagination is what I keep kind of coming back to. I probably meandered a bit off the topic.
No, I mean that gets me like that makes sense. I mean, yeah, they're having a philosophy of security with developers is sort of matching the creativity that you have as a developer, that you need to be thinking a little bit differently. Also, that same philosophy goes for security side as well. So I think that it's one of those things where if developers and security teams are working, in synchronization, that are both thinking sort of a little bit forward, that you're kind of covering all the bases you need, especially when you need to rush features out, but you also need to make sure that you're keeping them secure.
For sure. And I think that's probably one of the tricks there, is that you've got a time schedule to build this software. And so there's two ways that you can collaborate with security. One is we kind of, everybody's all excited about being almost ready to release. And then you say, okay, let's bring the security people in to start asking us questions. Now we're the bad people who are basically telling you why you might not be ready for release. And somebody's got to go back to, you've either got to, accept the risk or push the schedule out. You've got to do more development. Okay, it's no fun coming in at the tail end, basically being bearer of bad news and stuff like that. And frankly, nobody's having any fun talking about how to deal with these problems at that point. Okay, so let's flip the script. What if, while we're in some of the design phase or minimum viable product, or in QA, some space in the leftward, I'm going to say here, that we're talking about this stuff, and it actually is pretty fun because we still have some slack in our schedule, and these things start to get built into the product plan because it's important. It's just an entirely different conversation. So that's where I'd rather be, where in the discussion. But if it's at the tail end, we're about ready to push the ship it button and let's talk security. I'm still glad we're having the conversation, but boy, it's more fun earlier.
I feel like it probably is something that is iterative. So as you're moving towards shipping your code, you're probably having certain milestones that you're checking to make sure you filled security requirements, and then you continue. And then in case there was something that was missed or needs to be changed, you get that done by the next sprint or the next milestone. And then it kind of sort of works out so that by the time you're ready to release, you've really covered all the bases that you could think of at the time.
For sure. It's and it doesn't mean that what you ship is going to actually be secure. There's novel ways that things go boom, but you're just trying to improve the odds. Yeah.
Yeah, I really like that saying. There are novel ways that things go boom. That's a good tagline. Maybe put on a t-shirt. So continuing on the same sort of thread, we talk about how security and developer sides, sort of should synchronize, think the same way. How do you actually sort of in real terms bridge that developer and security gap?
Well, first you have to bridge the security and project manager gap, so that it is, I can win as many converts in developer land as possible. And that's not often too hard from the background that I have. So I need the project manager to agree that this has a place in the schedule, that this has a place in the budget. And that really makes the difference. And increasingly, it's not that hard as long as you can get these conversations a little bit earlier. But some of the practical things that I like to is to suggest for developers is there's oftentimes whatever your IDE is that you're using, if you just start doing a Google search on security related plugins, given the combination of your IDE and your language, there's a lot of stuff that will help you in static analysis early on to have some kind of warnings that are in there. That's one of these really easy wins, in my opinion. You take it with a grain of salt because some of the recommendations, aren't, there's going to be a lot of effort for little gain. And that's some of the consultative side of it that I let them know, the door's always open to have conversations about this stuff. I probably won't have all the answers either. We'll search this stuff up together. I mean, the number one skill of being a software developer is being pretty dang good at Google, and that has crossed over into security as well. So, That's an example of something, I think very practical. But it's winning developers over, I have not found is hard if they have the endorsement of their project managers in this stuff.
Interesting. I was actually going to ask sort of what do you like your first initial meeting with any group of developers, let's say, what would be sort of your initial thoughts about how do you present, what security plan you want to bring in case, I assume that some things, would have been done at that time that the developers would have checked and would have done. But what's sort of like your opening pitch to the developers when you come onto a project saying, hey, this is a kind of where my thoughts are. We need to focus on this, that, and the other thing. What are those things that you're focusing on?
Well, you've probably caught a little bit of what I've said thus far about kind of making, that it can be fun. So I'm a big believer, having managed software development teams, that I was always trying to, when people are enjoying what they're doing, I get the best work out of them. Now, granted, sometimes when you're, debugging some ornery problem that you're not making progress on, it's not much fun. We all got to take out the garbage. But generally, you can find a way to present what you're doing as interesting and fun. So rather than kind of going into this to say, hi, I represent the security team, we're all about writing policies, procedures, and controls, and getting auditors, up in your business. That's one way I could, come in there and just say, and that's how it's going to be. And let me help you to, get through this successfully without a lot of pain. We can do that, and that is, part of it for sure. But what I like to do is, it goes back to that imagination. I'll say, if we do this well, we can actually do some fun things. A classic example that I give is, if you're doing a web application and some clown is poking around trying to get to the etc password file, you can just give them a 404 error. You can just not give them something. Let's have some fun. Let's give them a document that has some. You can either have some total nonsense, or that uses a weak password strength, but it's not the actual passwords to our systems. Now we've got a notion of what IP address that grabbed the file and is poking. And now we know about somebody who actually is interested in going after us instead of just casually going by. Okay, let's ban, now we can start banning their IP address and doing something practical. So a case like that, I start to see people's eyes light up, meaning, I get to screw with somebody. I get to be creative and go, and it's not a lot of time and effort to do that kind of thing. And again, it's engaging the imagination to think how adversaries work and they operate. So if I can start us off with, maybe not the very first thing, but by early on, get us involved in how can we do something that's kind of cool with security, or that makes a good story, like that thing about the password file, then I've kind of got people's attention a little bit better.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, everyone loves a good story, and everyone likes to, screw around with bad actors. So why not just go at it full force? So that's great. And we're basically here at the last question of the episode, which is just my question I like to ask every one of my guests. And that is, can you give us one or two ways that developers could practice better security on a regular basis that hopefully doesn't impact their daily development work?
Sure. And I think one of them I probably mentioned is, security, plugins for IDEs. Another one is, if you can devote some time to somebody's attention on your CI/CD pipeline, that area, whatever the tool set that you've got in your environment, if you're using GitHub Actions, for example, search up like GitHub Actions exploit or GitHub Actions security hardening, things like that. and find a few articles to broaden your imagination for the ways that it can be misused, and you will begin to see ways that you can, without a lot of effort, harden what you're doing. Another one of because once you've done that, it's not going to impact your work life. It's a little bit of effort for a lot of gain. The other part is get real about secrets management. If your mechanisms are kind of weak, I think most of us have moved beyond secrets management, hard coded in some config file and so on. We've come a long way, but most people, whatever they're doing today, has some real leakage risk. And so you want to have stuff that prevents that from making your secrets, API keys and stuff from getting into, getting out. There's a lot of ways, there's a variety of ways, and it really depends on your environment, how you're doing things. But after you've invested some common sense effort, you just feel a lot more content or comfortable about your development posture, because a lot of all this stuff gets to is that as a developer, there's some developers are more impacted by what happens in production than others. Some it's just I'm developing the system. Others are also, they're kind of, to be activated on, remediation of production issues. The smaller team you are, the more that is. But regardless, you don't like to hear about any kind of crazy kind of production thing happening. So this may be kind of related to the previous question in engaging developer interest, is that we think about security often as just did somebody abuse the system, take data, or deface the system. But availability, there's these three tenets of security. There's a confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So I found that developers always relate to the availability side, that if something can make your system unavailable for people to use, crashed, down, or up, and that people take notice of that really fast. And so, not to scare people, but security's on your side there to try to improve the uptime and availability. So that's kind of my pitch for how to how to make it matter for people.
Perfect. Fantastic. Duane, thank you so much for your time. I learned a lot. It was great to get sort of this higher level thought process about how to connect the two sides of things, rather than, just talking about sort of the bits and bytes. So I really appreciate your time. Good luck with Converge and continuing success there. And I look forward to potentially having a talk again in the future.
Definitely. This was really enjoyable. Nice talking with you.
Wonderful. All right, Duane, have a really great day and stay secure.